Hey everyone, and welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think about running and why anyone would willingly do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like mile after mile. It
Yeah.
just seems crazy.
Right.
I mean, there's a whole book about it.
Oh, yeah.
It's called I Hate Running and You Can Too.
Ah.
But the author of that book has run thousands and thousands of miles.
Wow, that's wild.
So that's what we're looking at today. The book I Hate Running and You Can Too by Brendan Leonard.
Okay.
It's on Amazon, link in the description below if you want to check it out.
Cool.
And this book isn't your typical how-to-run book
Yeah.
or some elite athlete memoir or anything like that.
Right.
This is a look at running as an irrational passion
Okay.
and why so many of us run, even when we don't enjoy it all the time.
I like that.
This is kind of a humorous book,
Okay.
but it also gives us a lot of insights into the psychology of running.
Interesting.
So we're going to take a deep dive into this book today
Awesome. I'm ready.
and try to figure out why running is so appealing, even though it can be so tough sometimes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on more deep dives like this one.
All right, let's do this.
So the author, Brendan Leonard, he's really honest in the book right from the start.
Okay.
He says that he hates running 3 or 4 times a week.
Wow.
He would much rather be doing something like napping or eating pizza,
That's fair.
which honestly, same.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But he still runs all the time.
So he really hates it, like all the time.
Yeah, he even talks about how he's hated it during short runs, like just 3 miles after work. And during marathons, like the New York City Marathon.
Oh, wow.
And even during 100-mile races.
100 miles?
Yeah, like 100 miles.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's why.
And he still does it even though he hates it.
Yeah. And his story's even more interesting because he wasn't a great runner in high school or anything.
Oh, really?
He talks about almost vomiting during a 400-meter race.
Oh, man.
And then after he ran a marathon to try to quit smoking,
Okay.
he didn't run for 9 years. It wasn't until he was in his mid-30s that he got back into running.
What made him start running again after all that time?
Well, he says that he needed to exercise regularly for his health
Right.
and for his sanity,
I get that.
and he just kind of kept doing it.
Makes sense.
He also says that sometimes when he's running, he'll think to himself, this isn't so bad. But it's not like he loves it all the time, you know?
Yeah.
Some people might think that he's a masochist for running even though he hates it,
Yeah, I can see that.
and he acknowledges that perception.
Okay.
But he says that he thinks there's more to it than that.
What do you mean?
He's noticed that a lot of people run,
Yeah, that's true.
and he thinks it's because there's this shared itch that runners have.
An itch.
Yeah, like this urge to run.
Interesting.
And he thinks that creates a sense of community among runners,
Okay, yeah.
even if they don't always love the experience of running.
It's like we're all in this together.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
He also talks about why running became so popular in the 1970s and 80s.
Why is that?
Well, it's way cheaper than buying a bunch of gym equipment.
True.
It's also really easy to start.
Yeah.
All you need is a good pair of shoes and you can go.
That's one of the things I like about running.
Yeah, me too.
You can just do it anywhere.
Yep, at any time.
And at any speed or distance.
Exactly, and you can run alone or with friends.
Yep.
It's a really versatile activity.
It is.
He also makes the point that most runners aren't elite athletes.
Of course not.
Most of us are just regular people with jobs and families and, all the regular stuff.
Right.
And running is just our hobby.
That's me.
Me too.
Sometimes it feels kind of crazy, though.
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing this to myself?
I know, right?
But I guess we keep coming back for some reason.
Yeah, there's something about it.
Maybe it's that runner's high people talk about. Or maybe it's just the feeling of accomplishment.
Could be.
Whatever it is, it keeps us going.
Yeah, so Leonard quotes Dean Karnazes in the book.
What's that?
He's a famous ultra runner.
Okay.
And Karnazes says that running isn't really fun,
Hmm.
but it can be enjoyable or rejuvenating.
Interesting.
So it's not always fun while you're doing it,
Right.
but it can be a good feeling afterward.
Yeah, like you're glad you did it.
Exactly.
I get that.
Leonard also says that his relationship with running is kind of like having a weird friend.
Oh, what do you mean?
It's not like a straightforward love-hate relationship.
Okay.
It's more like this friend who's good for you,
Uh-huh.
but also kind of annoying.
Ha-ha. I like that.
And he even made a t-shirt that says, I hate running.
That's so great.
I know, right? It's perfect.
So he's encouraging people to keep running even if they don't love it.
Yeah, he thinks if you can push through that initial part where it sucks,
Right.
you might find those moments where you actually enjoy it.
I think that's true.
He says that's what keeps a lot of runners coming back for more.
Makes sense.
So let's talk about the idea of running long distances.
Okay.
Because unless you're trying to catch a bus or something,
Right.
there's no real logical reason to run long distances.
I mean, we have cars and bikes and all that.
Exactly. We don't need to run.
So why do we do it?
That's the question, isn't it?
It seems kind of irrational.
It does. Leonard talks about how he's run all sorts of distances.
Like what?
From 1 mile all the way up to 102.9 miles.
Whoa, over 100 miles.
Yep.
That's crazy.
And he says that once you actually complete one of these distances, it stops seeming so irrational.
Really?
It might still be hard,
Yeah.
but you've done it.
You've proven it's possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he makes this point about how the definition of a long distance is different for everyone.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
If you don't run at all, running a mile might seem like a long distance.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you're used to running marathons, then a mile is nothing. It's all relative.
I like that.
So he lays out some key principles for runners in the book.
Okay, I'm interested to hear these.
The first one is start small. Start now.
That sounds like good advice.
It is. And he tells this story about Alex Honnold's mother.
The climber.
Yeah.
Cool.
So his mom, Deirdre, went from not running at all
Wow.
to running a marathon in her 50s
No way. How did she do that?
by gradually increasing her distance. Her son would just tell her, if you can do one, you can do 1.5.
That's a great way to approach it.
Yeah, just taking those small steps.
This makes it seem less daunting.
Exactly. And he contrasts that with making big New Year's resolutions.
Which usually fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He says it's better to gradually improve yourself
I agree.
rather than trying to completely transform overnight.
Yeah, that never works.
He even quotes Leo Babauta, who says, make it so easy you can't say no.
I love that.
Me too. It took the pressure off.
So true.
The second principle is walking is running.
Oh, interesting.
And he talks about how when he was training for his first marathon,
Yep.
he was determined to run the whole thing without walking.
Okay.
But then he tried to grab water at an aid station and ended up soaking himself.
Uh-huh. Oh, no.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty.
So he learned that walking can be helpful.
He did. And he points out that a lot of marathoners use walk breaks, even those who are aiming for a good time.
Ah,
He mentions Jeff Galloway, who's famous for his run-walk method.
I've heard of him.
So even if you walk during a race, you can still finish with a respectable time.
I had no idea.
And when you get into ultramarathons, walking is even more common.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Those races are so long and the terrain can be really challenging.
For sure.
He talks about the 3 pillars of ultra running:
What are those?
running, walking, and eating.
Eating.
Yep. You have to fuel your body,
Right, of course.
especially during a race that long.
So walking is essential for ultramarathons.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's not just about running the whole time.
Well,
And he says that top race walkers can actually qualify for the Boston Marathon just by walking.
that's how efficient they are.
Wow.
So walking is definitely a legitimate form of exercise.
I'm starting to see that.
And he encourages beginners to start with walking.
Right.
It gets your body used to being on its feet,
Right.
and it makes the transition to running a lot easier.
I like that.
He quotes Megan Hicks, who says, speed isn't nearly as important as not stopping.
That's a good point.
And she says that you can do all sorts of things while you're walking.
Like what?
You can eat, you can cry. She even says you can puke and walk at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
She's hardcore.
She is.
But her point is that there's no reason to stop.
I get it.
Just keep moving forward.
That's the key.
All right, the third principle is slow is eventually fast.
Okay.
And he uses this analogy of mountain guides.
Okay.
When they're leading climbs at high altitude,
Yeah.
they set a really slow pace
Why?
because it's more efficient in the long run.
Oh, I see.
If you go too fast, you'll burn out.
Makes sense.
And he says it's the same with running, especially when you're starting out.
It's better to focus on not stopping,
Exactly. Don't worry about your speed too much.
to keep moving.
And he talks about how he used to ruin his runs by starting out too fast.
Yeah, I've done that.
It's a common mistake.
It is.
He mentions David Roche, who's a running coach.
Okay.
And Roche recommends that 80% of your running should be easy,
Easy.
like at a conversational pace.
Interesting.
So you should be able to talk while you're running.
That seems really slow.
It might feel slow,
Yeah.
but it's actually more beneficial in the long run.
How so?
It helps you build a strong aerobic base,
Okay.
and it reduces your risk of injury.
That's important.
He also says that by enjoying your runs and keeping them easy,
Mm-hmm.
you'll actually get faster over time.
Oh, that's counterintuitive.
It is. But it works.
I'll have to try that.
You should. And he talks about the hedonic treadmill.
What's that?
It's the idea that we adapt to improvements.
Okay.
So if you're always pushing harder, you might never actually feel satisfied.
That's a good point.
It's better to find a pace that you enjoy.
And stick with it.
Exactly. And then he talks about Caballo Blanco.
Who's that?
He was a famous ultra runner.
Okay.
And his mantra was easy, light, smooth, and fast.
I like that.
Me too. It's a great mantra for runners.
And it all starts with easy.
Yep. That's the foundation.
All right, what's the next principle?
Okay. Number 4 is compete against yourself.
Interesting.
He talks about how when you're at the starting line of a race,
Yeah.
it's easy to start comparing yourself to everyone else.
Oh, I totally do that.
We all do it.
It's hard not to.
It is. But he says we should try to resist that urge.
Okay.
Because the real competition is against yourself.
Against myself.
Yep. It's about trying to be better than you were yesterday.
I can get behind that.
It's a much healthier way to approach running.
Agreed.
And even if you don't race,
Yeah.
don't compare yourself to other runners that you see.
It's easy to get discouraged.
It is. He has this great line, anybody that runs is a runner's body.
I love that.
It's true. You don't have to look a certain way to be a runner.
Exactly.
And he points out that when you see people cheering at races, they're not just cheering for the winners.
They're cheering for everyone.
We are. They're cheering for the effort.
Yeah.
And for the commitment.
I love that.
He quotes Alistair Jones, who says, do you run?
Yeah.
If you can answer yes, you are without doubt a real runner.
Perfect.
So if you run, you're a runner.
It's that simple.
It is.
Yeah.
And even if you finish last in a race,
Yeah.
you still finished.
That's an accomplishment in itself.
It is. And he tells this story about Gunhild Swanson.
Who's that?
She's a 70-year-old woman who finished the Western States 100.
The 100-mile race?
Yep.
Wow.
And she finished with just 6 seconds to spare before the cutoff.
That's incredible.
I know, right? And the crowd went wild when she crossed the finish line. She was a winner in her own right.
Yeah.
So competing against yourself can mean a lot of different things.
Like what?
It can mean choosing to go for a run instead of watching TV.
Okay.
Or pushing through when you feel tired.
Right.
Or facing those mental challenges that come up.
Yeah, like telling yourself you can't do it.
Exactly. You have to overcome that voice in your head.
That's the real challenge.
Okay. Principle number 5 is get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Huh, interesting.
Let's be real. Exercise isn't always fun.
No, it's not.
It can be uncomfortable.
It definitely can be.
But Leonard's point is that you have to decide if it's worth it for you.
With the discomfort.
Yes.
Okay.
And he makes a distinction between the fatigue that comes with exercise
Right.
and the pain of an injury.
Oh, yeah, those are different.
If you're injured, you should stop and see a doctor.
Of course.
But if it's just discomfort,
Yeah.
that's something you can push through.
Okay.
And he says that with practice, running becomes more uncomfortable than painful.
So you get used to it.
You do. And eventually that discomfort can even become satisfying.
Really?
Yeah, because it means you're pushing your limits.
You're getting stronger.
Exactly. And he talks about how you can't always control the weather when you're running,
That's true.
but you can control your clothing.
And your attitude.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he reminds us that there's no bad weather, only bad clothing.
That's a good one.
He also says that you run the first half with your legs
Mm.
and you run the second half with your head.
Meaning?
The mental aspect of running is really important.
Especially for long distances.
Exactly. And he talks about this 80-20 rule in terms of morale.
Okay.
He says that the last 20% of a run can feel way harder than the first 80%.
Oh, for sure.
And he shares this mantra from ultra runner Courtney Dahlwalter.
Okay.
She says, you're fine. You're fine. You're doing fine. This is fine.
I like that.
It's simple but effective.
It is.
And he explains that running can help you build a higher tolerance for pain and challenges in other areas of your life.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not just about physical fitness.
It's about mental toughness, too.
Exactly. And he calls it the, if I can run X miles, then Y doesn't seem so bad effect.
I love that.
Okay, the next principle is do the verb until you become the noun.
What does that mean?
He's addressing the idea that a lot of people say, I could never do that. I'm not a runner.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And he says that you don't have to be a runner to run.
Right.
You become a runner by running.
So true.
He quotes Austin Kleon, who says, forget the noun, do the verb.
I like that.
Me too. So just go run.
Don't worry about labels.
Exactly. And he uses the analogy of applying for a job.
Uh-huh.
If you think you're not qualified for a job,
Uh-huh.
you have to convince yourself that you are.
And then you have to convince the employer.
Right. And he says there's no job listing for runner.
Mm-hmm.
The only requirement is to run.
So just do it.
Exactly. And he quotes Bart Yasso, who says, "We are all runners. Some just run faster than others."
That's a good one.
He also says, "I have never met a fake runner."
Aha, I love that.
Me too. Okay, principle number 7 is inspiration is not a strategy. So we've all seen those inspiring montages in movies.
Yeah, like in Rocky.
Exactly. And that initial inspiration can be great,
Right, it gets you motivated.
but it doesn't last.
Yeah, that's true.
You need something more than inspiration to keep you going.
Like what?
Discipline.
Okay.
He uses the analogy of a spark versus a fire.
Okay, I like that.
Inspiration is the spark.
But discipline is the fuel that keeps the fire burning.
Exactly. And he says that you have to show up for work,
Show up for work.
even when you don't feel like it.
Like having a job.
Exactly. He quotes Chuck Close, who says, "Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work."
That's a good one.
Right. He also talks about something he calls the fear-based fitness plan.
Oh, what's that?
It's basically signing up for a race or event that scares you a little bit.
Okay.
So the fear of not being able to do it
Yeah.
will motivate you to train.
Interesting.
But he says that the fear should be motivating, not paralyzing.
Right, you don't want to be so scared that you don't even try.
Exactly. And he talks about how not wanting to let other people down can be a powerful motivator,
Okay.
but he says you can apply that to yourself too.
Be yourself.
Yeah, like if you make a promise to yourself to run 4 miles on Tuesday,
Uh-huh.
you should treat that promise just as seriously as if you made it to someone else.
I like that.
Accountability is key.
It is.
All right, principle number 8 is write your own definition of success.
Okay.
So he pushes back against that idea that second place is the first loser.
Oh, yeah. Hate that saying.
Me too.
Yeah.
He says that winning isn't the only reason to participate in sports.
Of course not.
And he brings up Gunhild Swanson again.
The woman who finished the Western States 100?
Yep. And he points out that even though she finished last,
Yeah.
she was still a winner.
In her own way.
Exactly. She
Yeah.
achieved something incredible.
She did.
And he says that since most of us won't win races,
Right.
we need to find other ways to define success.
Okay. I like that.
Running gives you this sense of freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah, like there's no boss telling you what to do.
Haha.
You set your own goals.
And you achieve them on your own terms.
Exactly. And he quotes the climber Alex Lowe, who said, "The best climber in the world is the one who's having the most fun."
I love that.
Me too. And I think it applies to running as well.
Totally.
So find what makes running fun for you.
And define success in your own way.
Exactly. And he gives all these examples of what success can look like.
Like what?
It could be running a certain number of times per week,
Okay.
or hitting a specific mileage goal,
Makes sense.
or completing a race without stopping.
I like that.
It's all up to you.
Your own personal definition of success.
Right. Principle number 9 is progress is not a straight line.
That's true for a lot of things in life.
It is. And he talks about how we tend to envision this perfect path to our goals.
Like a straight line.
Yeah. But in reality, it's almost never like that.
There are always bumps in the road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he relates it to running. You might have to deal with things like untied shoelaces,
Uh-huh. Right.
or stomach problems,
Oh, yeah.
or injuries.
Those are the worst.
They are, but they're part of the process.
Yeah, you can't always prevent them.
And he says that even though progress isn't linear,
Uh-huh.
you should always be aiming to improve in some way.
Even if it's just a small improvement.
Yep. And he describes his own experience with running as having sticking points and regressions.
So it wasn't always easy for him.
Nope. But he kept going.
And he learned from his setbacks.
Exactly. And he says that for long-term runners,
Yeah.
a single setback becomes less significant over time.
Because you have a bigger picture to look at.
Right. It's all about the long game.
Okay. I like that.
Principle number 10 is it's only half about running.
Interesting. What does that mean?
So he talks about all the invisible work that goes into training for a race,
Okay.
like all the miles you run before the actual race.
Right.
He jokes about how you might run 1,200 miles to train for a 100-mile race.
Uh-huh. That's crazy.
It is. And he uses the example of a half-marathon training plan.
Okay.
You'll likely run way more than 13.1 miles in training.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But he says that the race itself isn't really the point.
Oh, really?
The point is the process.
The process of training.
Yep. That's where you build mental toughness
Okay.
and physical strength.
And you learn about yourself.
Exactly. And he talks about all the positive side effects of running.
Like what?
You sleep better, you're less stressed, you might even enjoy food more.
Wow.
And he quotes Alexandra Hemmensley, who talks about how running helped her realize that her self-imposed boundaries weren't real.
That's powerful.
It is. And he compares running to making music.
How so?
He quotes Bruce Springsteen, who says that making music is a project of self-realization. And Leonard says that running can be the same way.
Interesting.
It's about pushing yourself and growing as a person.
I like that.
All right. Principle number 11 is there are no hacks.
Mina.
Running is pretty straightforward. You put in the effort and the time, and you'll get results.
Like anything else in life.
Exactly. There's no magic pill or secret shortcut.
So you can't cheat the system.
Nope. And he points out that even elite marathoners have to work really hard.
Right. They don't just show up and win.
They put in hours and hours of training.
It's inspiring.
It is. And he says that putting in the effort is actually one of the benefits of running.
How so?
Because it makes you feel accomplished.
Oh.
Even on days when you don't feel like running.
Yeah, I get that.
You'll feel better after you do it.
That's the truth.
And he quotes Oprah Winfrey, who says, running is the greatest metaphor for life because you get out of it what you put into it.
That's a great quote.
It is. All right, principle number 12 is F*% busy.
Wow, cooking.
He's addressing the idea that a lot of people say they're too busy to run.
Yeah, I've definitely said that before.
And he's challenging that idea.
How so?
He asks, are you really too busy or are you just telling yourself that?
That's a good question.
He points out that most of us spend a lot of time on our phones.
True.
And that's time that could be used for running.
If it's a priority.
Exactly. And he gives the example of Liza Howard.
Who's that?
She's a running coach and a mother.
Okay.
And she still finds time to train at an elite level.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is. And he says that your goals don't have to be huge.
Right.
Even small amounts of running can be beneficial.
I agree.
And he says that if running is important to you,
yeah,
you'll find the time.
You'll make it happen.
Exactly. And he ends with this quote, one of these days is none of these days.
I like that.
Me too. Okay, last principle.
Okay, hit me.
Loving something is different than liking it.
Interesting.
He tells this story about asking an audience if they love their children.
Okay.
And then he asks if they like their children 100% of the time. Most people don't.
Of course not.
But they still love them.
Right.
And he says it's the same with running.
You can love running without liking it all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You might not enjoy every single run.
Yeah.
But you can still love the overall experience.
And the benefits it brings.
Right. And he compares falling in love with a person to slogging into love with running.
Okay.
It's not always easy at first.
Right.
But it can get better over time.
With effort and commitment.
Exactly. And he says that everyone's love story with running is different.
I like that.
So to sum it all up,
yeah,
running is complicated.
For sure.
But it can also be really rewarding.
Absolutely.
And it's accessible to everyone.
No matter your age or fitness level.
Exactly. Remember to start small, incorporate walking, embrace a slower pace, compete against yourself, get comfortable with discomfort, become a runner by running from her, prioritize discipline over inspiration, define your own success, accept that progress isn't linear, recognize.